So now we're moving on to citations. But first, I want to distinguish those from references. These are commonly confused words, even on websites like Google Scholar, even in your research methods textbook, but not so much in your APA manual. I see this done wrong all over the place. A citation is the in-text part. It's really short. These are the ones where you drop the author's name and the year in parentheses right next to the author's ideas where they pop up in the text. A reference, on the other hand, those go in their own section at the very end of the paper, and that lists the full bibliographic information that's used to find a source. All cited sources that end up being in short in-text citations in the paper somewhere need to go in the reference section, and everything that's in the reference section needs to be cited somewhere in the text, which is almost always going to be in your literature review. Authors do cite research in their measures section a lot if they use other people's questionnaires, and they do cite stuff in their discussion, but you're not going to have to do either of those. So only in your literature review. So a reference section is not like an MLA style bibliography that you do in your English classes. Everything that's in this section actually has to be referred to specifically where that information shows up in your paper. Here are examples of citation guidelines, and I basically ripped these right from your APA manual. This is on the inside cover for me as well, but it is in a whole section about citations in your book as well. I don't recall the chapter or page off the top of my head. But we cite differently based on the author, whether it's parenthetical or whether it's a narrative citation. So a parenthetical citation just means you stick this at the end of the sentence, and then a narrative citation is where you actually make the researchers the subject of the sentence. It also makes a difference whether we have 2 authors, 3 or more, whether the author is a group, like APA, American Psychological Association, is a group author for your second textbook. I want to highlight specifically some issues in the 2 authors and 3 or more authors sections. So notice where we have 2 authors, where it's parenthetical, we use the ampersand, which is the weird curly and symbol that's with the number 7 on your keyboard. So the ampersand we use in parentheses for 2 authors. If it's a narrative citation, however, we spell out the word "and" because it's not in parentheses, it's in the full sentence. And in APA style, we spell out words completely in sentences unless their abbreviations will be introduced before. We don't use symbols like the ampersand outside of parentheses. So if the sentence said, Thomas and Kirby in 2020 wrote a paper about situational interest, then you need to use "and." It's spelled out. Instead, you could use the parenthetical citation, so that would be something like you have a fact, situational interest, predicted conceptual change, and then at the end of that sentence, you throw the citation, Thomas and Kirby 2020. That's where you're going to use the ampersand. When you have 3 or more authors, we use et al., and there are some formatting differences here, again, between parenthetical and narrative citation that are subtle, that I need you to know the difference between. When we use the parenthetical citation, et has no punctuation after it, all has a period and a comma. So we always separate the author part of a citation from the year part using a comma. So that's why it goes here in a parenthetical citation. In narrative citations, we do not do that. So et al., by the way, just means and others. So we're just saying Pace Scott and a bunch of other authors. We don't know how many. Could be 3, could be 200. When we do a narrative citation, we do not put the comma because the comma outside of parentheses just needs to be used like it normally is in a sentence. It's not separating author from year anymore because the parentheses are doing that for us. So when we use Pace Scott et al. 2019, or we can even write it Pace Scott and colleagues 2019, then we do not use the comma. And I just want to draw your attention again to the concept of a narrative citation because many students ignore this one altogether, but it's a great way to vary your sentence structure and take your writing to the next level and make it a little more professional. So you can use all parenthetical citations and it's technically correct, but it just looks kind of messy to me, and it makes all your sentences look very formulaic. So instead, we want to change it up. We want to make it clear in some of the sentences who did that research, who was the researcher. So as I mentioned before, you could say Kirby 2020 found that short meditation sessions in the classroom were not very different from just short silent sessions at the beginning of the classroom. Both impacted academics and students' feelings about the course. There, notice I used Kirby as the subject of the sentence. I didn't say, in an article by Kirby 2020, or in an article called Brain Breaks, Outcomes of Short Meditation Sessions in the Classroom, or anything else like that. In research done by Kirby 2020, I just made the author's name the subject of the sentence. That makes your writing more concise. And that's something we're trying to aim for in APA style, is get our thoughts across with as few words as possible. So we want to make our sentences clean, short, simple, easy to understand. Use your author as the subject of the sentence. I don't want to see every citation in this format either. I want you to switch it up between narrative and parenthetical.